How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Terror Talk. Guys, we're going to talk about transfer anxiety. There's many times where you could wind up going from one facility to another. If you're at the prison side, it could be for a promotion. It could be something's closer to home. Sometimes you get mergers. That could also happen on the jail side as well. You know, people do switch from county to county. But the goal for this discussion is, how do you deal with transfer anxiety? Because we all do get it, and we just want to give some advice on what are some of the best tips when adjusting to a new location. And we could discuss the many roles in which that transfer takes place. So again, it could be a promotion, could be just, I just want to get closer to home, or maybe there's something that this new facility can offer that my old one can't. I always say you should be chasing something, not just running away from something. So if there's something the new facility offers and it's worth it, then go for it. But we're not looking to escape something, because believe it or not, and Connie, who's going to be on the show, I'm sure can comment on this, but the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So again, just make sure you're running towards something and not running away from something. And again, my guest is going to be Connie Alleyne. We haven't seen her in a while, so it's great to have her on. But real quick, let's go over our sponsors. First sponsor we have is American Military University. If you guys are looking to seek a degree, get higher education, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk, and they do have programs for those that work in corrections. So give it a call, see what they have to offer. And again, guys, let's bring experience into the classroom. So get that degree and let's teach those students. We also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That book is now available on the market. Link to that is in the description. This book does very well, obviously. It sells multiple copies a month. It's used for training all across the country. So, guys, thank you for the continued support. And let's keep that book moving, because there is good information. And, guys, don't forget, one last one. How to Succeed in Corrections, Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison, does got a release date of August 31st. This book's just got tons of information in it. Not just for myself, because yes, I did write some passages, of course, but there are a lot of people from all over the profession, from all walks of the profession, that have given me some good quotes that can connect to the passages. The publishing company is Blue 360, and the link to their website and the link to the book, if you want to do a pre-order. And when you do a pre-order, it comes with the app, the book, the softcover book, whatever it is, the actual book, and then an ebook. And I think it's $39.99, but you could pre-order now and get all three of those components, whatever it is. And the link to that is in the description. All right, let's get Connie. Connie, what is up, Connie?
Hello. Everything is good. I'm excited. We haven't done this in a while.
No, we missed. That's on me. Just scheduling.
Life happens. It is what it is.
And you're also very busy too. I know best time that works for me is Friday night, but that's your family time, so you don't want to interfere with family time. But let's catch up before we get into the show. We have a lot of people that would love to hear what you've been up to. How's the academy going? How's your book going? Connie, what the hell is going on with you?
So the academy is going good. We continue. I think we're right now moving through Michigan. We had quite a few contacts in Michigan, and so we're hoping to get Academy up and running in Michigan. That'll be a new territory for us. We have kind of worked a little bit through Delaware, but there's a lot to do, and there's me and one person who, she and I are doing what we got to do to kind of make it happen. And then we have like a little team of folks who are just kind of doing the registrations and all the other stuff. So yeah, we got our hands full, to say the least. Outside of that, the book is going. I have a recognition that I'm supposed to attend in August, I believe. So that'll be very different, right? An author recognition. And then there is the expert witness situation. So thank you for referring me to that. I'll be going in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I'll be going to Oregon to kind of dive into a case involving a staff person. So it's just all the stuff that I think when we put ourselves out there and we start being a true resource to the industry does embrace us.
Yeah, and I love what we do, guys. When we say that we're expert resources, we're not there to defend anybody's innocence or guilt. We're there just to state facts from an experience perspective, kind of like what we do pretty much here on the show. So now, Connie, you've actually switched from one facility, so you're aware, right? I mean, obviously,
Oh, absolutely.
so obviously there's transfer anxiety that comes with making one move from another. I mean, your move would be a jail to a state-run facility, correct?
Yeah, so but the move could be anything, right? So like I transferred from a pretrial facility where like everyone's going back and forth to court to a sentence facility, and then that's going jail. And then in the prison space, I transferred to a prison, right? But also going from male to female, going from New York to Connecticut. So the anxiety associated with transferring is very real just because, you have these expectations of yourself. And then there's expectations, I'm sure, that, the facilities have of you. You don't want to let people down, but it's also understanding that every facility has a different culture. The amount of time you spend in one facility, you become very connected with people. Like I would walk in, it's like, hey, Miss C, what's going on? Like a very like welcoming, and like then you can come into a space where it's very uptight and like you just don't even know what to expect in the morning. So I think part of like the routine getting switched up also can be anxiety provoking. So there's so many things that could come into play as you transfer to another facility. And really, what are we looking for, right? We are looking to kind of fit in. How do I make sure I belong here and like I'm not kind of making waves? I mean, you may have to make waves, but maybe not too soon. Like you still got to be a professional and do what you were hired to do. But I think it's just the anxiety associated with going into a new space and not knowing what to expect.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter the position you're entering in, because even if you're at a higher position, you should be entering those positions in a humble fashion, not looking to create the wheel. And I think for us, because I love what you just said. I also worked at a female facility starting off, and I had to work with men. So I think the big thing is that when you do the transfer, it's however you handle whatever those unknowns are to you that break you away from that routine. Because I think a lot of us get caught up in a routine that we become comfortable, which could be a good thing. I mean, I always tell people to kind of don't always stay comfortable. You got to look to grow. But there is some security and comfort as long as it doesn't stop you from taking the next step. I mean, that's the key. So again, I mean, yeah, I could stay and remain comfortable in familiar ground, but the only way I can make rank is by going here. So at that point, I'm going to tell you, go make the rank. Break out of your comfort zone, because then eventually you can learn and just kind of keep moving. But with that said, I guess the fear comes from the many variables, the many unknowns. And when I think of a prison transfer, I think of somebody or even a whole group of people, depending on if it's a prison closure or whatnot, going from one facility to the next. I picture a new kid going into a classroom and the teacher introduces the child to the rest of the class. And I believe the reason why she's doing that is because the new person coming to the class is the one that is out of their comfort zone, is the one that has to adapt and adjust. So what she's trying to do is build some help from the environment to aid that individual in knowing that, hey, you're accepted and let's,
you're welcomed here.
Help welcome you. So, Connie, I think that matters. So let's do this first. When it comes to transfer anxiety, right? I believe the people that are doing the move, the ones that are moving to the newer location are the ones that have the biggest adjustment to make. I'm not saying that there aren't adjustments on the other end. Sure, you got a new player in. Who the hell is this person? Got to figure them out. But for the most part, I think the big adjustment comes from the person who is starting the new location. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, so I think it first matters that we recognize that the anxiety is normal, right? Because it is a change. It is something different. it is going to make you feel a little uneasy, and your body is actually going to be responding to that, right? So just think about sort of the night before. Like I always, like as you mentioned, like the first day of school, right? You think about, what am I going to wear, what am I going to bring, what I'm not going to bring, all the stuff that kind of goes on in your head, right, before you get there. So there's sort of that mental fatigue, and sometimes people don't sleep well the night before, so you add in some physical fatigue, and then it's like you're approaching this new facility and you're approaching this unknown, and you're going to have your heart's going to be racing, right? Because it happens, people start sweating. There's this aspect of what goes along with having anxiety when you're transferring into a new facility. And then I also think there is also a level of feeling the need to prove yourself, right? Like, am I going to be good enough? Are they going to accept me for who I am and for my experience and what I'm going to bring to the table? And so I feel like the anxiety is also related to some insecurities that you might have. Like, at least over here, like everybody knew that I was the man, or I was good, or whatever your expertise is. Everyone already knew that. So now you're coming into this new space, and you may not have that same confidence because you're the new kid on the block. So yeah, I think acknowledging that, like, the feelings are normal, and like you're gonna kind of go through the motions until you actually get in there and recognize, like, oh, it's not that bad, it's just like the other facility I worked in. And you're gonna see the differences clearly. We always pick up on this works or this doesn't work, and honestly, I think it's the way you express that which will make for the anxiety to not be as bad. It may not present itself as badly as if you come in, you've got all this kind of nervous energy, and people can tell, right? Because that nervous energy can also be translated into something other than anxiety, right? Like people start getting suspicious of you. So just be mindful.
Yeah, it comes across in your body language. And I also want to mention something too. I love the fact how people feel they need to overcompensate by trying to impress when it really should be their time to learn. I think the problem is when you go to overcompensate to impress, you also can come off as arrogant, or if you don't know what you're talking about, foolish. So again, when you're crossing into that new territory, it really is your time to learn, ask why, and I don't care what position you're at. I mean, you're not going there to immediately make changes. But now, granted, I believe, because when we talked about culture, you mentioned culture. A good workplace culture is a culture that finds a way to unite everyone. And corrections, very important for all of us to be working together to meet our common objectives, our common goals. And we also don't want to be divided, because then at the end of the day, division, the only people that benefit from that are the manipulative inmates. So having said that, a workplace culture is very important when it brings people together and gets people to want to come to work. It could be tough where, it could be tough when you get like these forced closures.
And I like that. Get people to want to come to work.
Well, that's always been the key. I mean, that's the goal. And I think the want comes with valuing people, appreciating people, providing them with purpose, where they know when they come to work, they have meaning. Especially if they're making sacrifices. Like right now, we're understaffed. So the amount of time you're spending at work totally, literally surpasses what you're spending with your family. But I think the key here is that when you have a close-knit environment and we're all working as one, and then all of a sudden you find out that a transfer has to be done. Let's say they're closing one facility, and then everybody's being merged into another facility. That's tough, because every facility has a different culture. And now what's happening is you're uprooting this whole facility, this way of life. I would go as far as saying a way of life, and then bringing them to this new area where the cultures could be totally different. I mean, for example, you could have a culture where you had a family, a tight-knit environment, and now you're being sent to a facility that's laid out bigger. The buildings are more separate. and the facility is more isolated. And now you have people that from the prior facility that could see each other every day, and now they go to this newer facility because that's where the merge took place, and they don't see each other anymore. And they realize, like, man, this change is a lot more than I thought it would be, because now in the process of me having to get up and adapt and adjust, I've had to let go of so much. Things that,
but it's also forcing you to almost work in silos because of it.
well, yeah, you know what? That's what I mean. So, right. So
Mhm.
what I'm saying is this, is that I don't want to, when we talk about transferring from one facility to another, yes, facilities have set cultures. How I believe a culture works is when we're all working together. Can some people disagree with that? Maybe. I just don't see why you would, but I would prefer us all working together as one, a united force, whatever it is. So when you got a culture that was really working, and then you close that, and then you move them to another facility where it's a little bit more isolated in nature, where it's a bigger layout where people can't see each other every day. I think there's a lot of effort from management that's now needed to keep those bonds, to be intentional with making sure staff stay connected. I mean, there are some facilities where, what's funny? Let me just explain something real quick, Connie, and I know you're going to feel this thought, because things could always go both ways. I get it. But for the sake of this argument, sometimes when you have a closer knit facility where the buildings are smaller, it's not as spread out, you could maintain a good culture there because people can interact with each other. I mean, yeah, it could always cause conflict, but to be honest, with there's trust, we should be able to communicate well. The close environment allows for that, because you don't want separation, because again, what's the opposite of that? Would be separation. So you want to keep people connected. You want to keep them, moving forward as a team, being united. So you could have some facilities that have this layout where it's just so beneficial for staff, because at the end of each day, everybody still stays connected. They still see each other. And yes, there could be some practices from management that help that connection. Like we talk about shift briefings or overlaps or stuff that forces staff to kind of communicate with each other before they go on to their assigned post. Now, granted, for management at those types of facility, really, they just got to maintain positive momentum, because to be honest with you, the facility is the perfect environment for us to create something great, because it's there, it can keep people together. Now, when you get to the bigger facilities that are more spread out, there has to be a lot more intentional effort, because I believe at the bigger facilities, when they're spread out, especially if they're building by building by building, the default is going to be isolation. Because having said that, there's people they can't connect. You're working in separate buildings. It's just a bigger facility. So there's a chance where, I haven't seen my coworkers in years, because when I come to work, I go right to my post. They go right to their post. And, if you're lucky to have an event, no one knows each other anymore. And then what also winds up happening, you work in silos, people wind up competing, buildings wind up competing with each other. So I guess my question sort of is this, is that you do have environments that the layout could allow for connection. And then you have environments where it's spread out, and maybe it's not management's fault. They just have to try to find a way to kind of keep people connected. And by the way, at the smaller facilities, management can maintain momentum, but they may not be the one that's wholly responsible for keeping that connection. That really is the layout of the facility. It's just working well, and all management's got to do is just keep fueling it. Just keep fueling it. But for the facilities that are bigger, that are more spread out, yeah, there should be an intentional effort from management to say, yo, we got to do something, because if we don't, the default's going to be that we're not connected. So how much, well, let's do this. How important is the layout in an effort to keep people connected? And when you do have a spaced out facility, and you do have a larger facility where there is isolation, because again, the facility is so spread out, what do you do to try to keep people connected and not working in what's going to be, like you said, silos?
Yeah, so I think the smaller facilities, it's absolutely easier to maintain this this space of inclusivity, and sort of encourage folks to kind of lean on each other, right? Because that's typically where we get to know everybody, right? You walk past them every day, you see them on this line, or you see them going into this office. You may not know them, but you know of them, you know what they do, you know who they are. In the bigger facilities, where you may only see this person once a month because you guys happen to go to the same meeting on a particular day or what have you. I think that's where the challenge comes. I think from a management perspective, it'll always be important for us to provide them with opportunities to collaborate, whether it's some kind of committee that's up there. Like, I remember being a part of a safety committee. I was like, this is odd, right? But the fact that I was the administrator and here's this safety committee that was security focused, but spoke to other safety issues that the civilian staff should be aware of, right? And so me being able to work with folks that I'd never worked with before did me like wonders. Here's my network now, where I'm like, oh, I have this situation, I know who I can call, right? And I think the more we can present those opportunities where staff are working together, but I just feel like we have to be intentional about it, right? It can't be, even if it's like, okay, every month we're going to do this thing, or every other week, whatever the cadence is we establish. I think that it's important for us to do that. In the smaller facilities, I feel like because we are more engaged with each other, right? But we're more familiar with each other, we're more likely to maintain connection because it's smaller. Like, I know who I can go to. This person isn't unfamiliar. I just saw them yesterday, not last month, right? It makes for a much easier connection and maintaining that connectivity.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, I mean, one of the solutions we had is to kind of keep people assigned to different buildings, but that's not always the case. Some people have bidded assignments. So you can't just easily uproot them because they're bidded to these certain areas. So I love what Connie said.
Some assignments you got to be trained for.
Well, that too, obviously, 100%.
Yeah.
And I like what Connie said. I think that at this point here, when there is more of a momentum that isolates, I think, maybe events that bring people together. I mean, the thing is, and I've seen this happen. Some people think, well, we could do a healthy competition and try to like team one versus team building one, team A from building one versus team B from building two. And it's like, yeah, but guys, I just want to mention something that doesn't really force people to be connected. You want to be able to maybe merge.
No, building A is all connected. We're all in. We're all
in. But one person from building A, one person from building B, one person from building C.
Right.
I'm going to say something that I know people don't like to hear the word here, but hear me out, because this is a lot easier said than done. But for us as management, if there's a way, and again, we're talking about environments that are very separated. If there's a way that you could force interactions, I don't like using the word force.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so people get scared of the word force, and what I'm saying,
that's what I'm like.
Let's see. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying force is in the background. I mean, basically, put events together that force people to communicate. I'll give you an example. You do an event that allows people to get food, let's say. And of course, some people are like, well, hey, we got to get them to get food, but we got to get them to go back in the facility because they got to go cover their post. So for this special day, they can go ahead and eat in the facility. Yeah, but guys, that may defeat the purpose. I think that what happens is if we get everybody to come out, we should put them in a situation where they have to be able to eat outside
with each other
and have them interact with each other. So I'm using the word force, but a very gentle.
So an example of that I can think of is we had gotten these new gurneys coming into the facility. They were like air powered. There was like all this wonderfulness, right? And so we had decided that a way for us to bring kind of custody and medical together is that we would train with each other on how to use the new equipment, right? Because anytime there's a code, it's not just medical run into the code, right? Like, so if custody has to help out with the gurney or whatever, like at least all of us should know how to use it. So like we took we took turns, like who was going to be the patient, who's lifting, who's doing what, who's giving direction, and like seeing just how we were able to respond to each other and get to know each other just in this one exercise. You know, it kind of was a forced, like it was intentional for us to come together, because there seemed to be a divide that was building, and that allowed us all to kind of see each other's expertise, also to like make light of situations, right? Because now we're joking, right? Like this one's gonna fall off the gurney, this one's too heavy for the gurney, like all the stuff that, you know, just made it for a good time of everyone getting together. So when you first said force interaction, I was like,
I know.
But I do get what you're saying.
It's a scary word, because what I mean by force is that the environment secretly puts a little pressure,
Right.
you know, on people to interact, you know. And the good thing about this too, guys, is it does make use of a good event, like bringing in food from like a food truck or whatnot. Because at the end of the day, if it is about employee wellness, have we really brought people together? No, they just came in and got food and left. That to me, that defeats the purpose. I believe that there should be some level of interaction that we should have in an effort to keep people connected. And the reason why I was leaning on events, because it is going to be money, I'm leaning on events because I'm thinking of a way to bring people outside of the work element and then connect to each other as individuals. You know what I mean? I mean, we can even do outside activity events where you could bring the family and stuff. I mean, if that's possible, I think that could be possible. Have outside, have outings with the family in an effort to connect people. But the only problem is, guys, is that if you already have a silo mentality or isolated mentality, it's going to be very hard to convince those people to do that, because in their mind, home is home, work is work. And what we're trying to do is, if we want to keep people at a job, we want to motivate what we used to have back in the day. Guys, we used to have a family environment. Some facilities still have it, don't get me wrong, but the facilities that don't, you're missing out. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I've seen events where the families are coming together and they're not at work, they're just outside of things, and they're just shooting the shit and having fun. And you know, there's so much to that. And yeah, I get, you know, some people are like, well, listen, I leave all that stuff behind you, but I'm just going to tell you something. In the end, you truly are missing out on that powerful connection that's made that really can leak into the workplace in such a great way. I mean, really in such a great way. I also want to mention something too. Outside of events, you know, you always got to try to have somebody at the facility that can connect everyone. I do agree with this. However you want to label their position, it's worth the investment. What their job is one is they could also bring about consistent messaging. That's great, because, you know, if you're working at a big facility and everything's handled separately, you know, messages aren't being consistent because everybody's effectively interpreted their way, whatever it is. But I do believe it, and I'll ask you on this, Connie, because I know you agree, having a few centralized players who are focused on maintaining that connection, seeing where the influences are, and doing what they can to bring everyone together despite the obstacles. Because I want to, Connie, let me just mention something. By the way, work does force us to interact with each other. It does. So, I mean, yeah, we may have these great relationships, and then we don't realize that they were so great until one day we're retired and we miss everyone.
Right.
And that's because we never took the opportunity of going outside of the workplace and continuing good relationships. So why do I think that this is healthy is because, you know, at the end of the day, guys, this is a good portion of your life where you could develop workplace relationships that could last forever, you know, but we have to be able to make the initiative to take it with us outside of work, and also to bring our families and connect them to their families and just kind of solidify that bond. Because I'll tell you something right now, if you create a solidified bond outside of increasing morale, outside of just increasing our chance to stay connected, guess what? That family bond becomes almost impossible to break.
Yeah.
You know, Connie, what's your thoughts on just being that conduit to some extent? And I don't even want to say conduit, because I think it is a proactive role, but like being that person that kind of bridges that gap.
So I think it's important to have at least one of those people, right? Because that person is going to always stay focused on the, excuse me, on the mission at hand. And it's not a matter of, that individual having their own agenda per se, right? It's just us coming together. And I mean, I think there's always a connector in the bunch, right? There's always somebody that knows somebody that's willing to be like, oh, hey, meet so and so. She's new here, or this person is, this like I don't know that I've ever been to a place where, or to a facility where I didn't come across that person that was like, oh, you know who you have to meet? I didn't realize that you were into this thing, right? And it happens to be a person who could be one of the informal leaders who kind of has a very good working relationship with their colleagues, right? Who just are good at bringing people together. And I think when we do have those intentional events, there is a need for someone like that, because it's easy for us to kind of veer off to the people that we know, sit with the same people we always sit with, eat with the same people we always eat with, so maybe sometimes in those instances, if it's a sit down event, maybe it's an assigned seating arrangement and not so much you get to pick where you want to sit, right? Because now you're going to be at a table with people you don't know. And now it's time to talk, right? It's time to communicate, figure out who works where and how long you work there and what you guys do there. That's different from what I currently do. I think that it's critical to have those connectors who are going to kind of still stay focused on the mission, but actually be intentional about bringing people together.
Yeah, guys, it is an intentional effort. I believe that sometimes we're quick to blame management for bad morale, but I think it's, I think it is harder for us to really look at it and say, hey, what's really creating the morale? I mean, the bad morale. I mean, is it really management, or is there an impossible situation here? I mean, do we have a way for staff to connect, or is staff just kind of laid out and spread around, and there really are no efforts to bring people together? And do people even want to be together? And I'm going to be honest with you guys, the environment that goes towards us not wanting to be together, I think, is the issue. I think I know some people may be stubborn in their ways and saying, this dialogue forcing us to communicate. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with, us, just sharing in each other's experiences and just connecting on that level? I think that we've lost that. And I think that's why I'm doing this topic, because there are some people that have come from facilities that have that family mentality. And then when they come in to a newer facility, they're being told to kind of leave that shit behind. It's like, whoa, wait a second. I get that they're in your territory, but maybe they're in a position to influence you. Because again, I've seen it. When there's always going to be a need to.
But there's nothing wrong with that. Like, because I think some people feel like when you bring your stuff from the old facility, you're trying to bring the old facility with you. And it's oftentimes seen as something negative. Whereas if there's something good that was happening in the old facility, why can't we bring over a best practice, or here's something that worked really well, right? Without this automatic defense of what we have, right? You're coming in trying to change. It's like, no, you're not trying to change. But like, I think to two extents, right? So on one extent, you have the receiving facility possibly kind of giving the cold shoulder to this person who's coming in. And you also have this person coming in who may just shut down because now they're not open to having a family environment. They're not open to having, something that's a little more friendly than what they currently have. And so I think, it's a good point that you bring up, knowing that when people come in, we can't just say, no, leave that shit where you came from.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if you were. Yeah, I agree, and I think that's the key. I agree with you where when you have someone coming in and they're looking for some level of comfortability, they're looking to connect, and you go back and minimize that and negate that by saying, yeah, leave all that behind, because at the end of the day, what are you asking them to let go of? You're asking them to let go of human connection. So
and belonging.
and belonging, which is a hierarchy. It's one of the hierarchy, the Maslow
Yeah.
hierarchy of needs. So I believe that there is some adjustment from the other end to kind of maybe revisit what it is that they're doing in an effort to bring unity. Because guys, right now, and this is what it all comes down to, retention and recruitment. Really, we can hold on to people if we make the effort to hold on to people, not the effort to push them aside and then say, well, we're understaffed. There's nothing we're doing. I mean, guys, there are things we cannot control, which could be salaries at this point. But the things we can control is we could make it a welcoming environment. I have seen people say, yo, this money isn't worth it, but I'd be willing to work here because I love the environment. And the people that do stay because they feel, oh, well, they're foolish. No, they found something that they connect to. And maybe they have hope that things will change. But I think sometimes if we don't find the value in what we do and the value in how we could unite together, we wind up pushing people out. And at this time, I mean, do we really want to work in isolation, or do we want to try to build a connection to the point where, and this happened to me, Connie, I swear to God, it happened to me, where I was offered something and I said, you know what, if I take this opportunity, I feel, not that people made me feel this way, but I would feel guilty because I'm leaving good people behind. And I never lost my purpose. Like I was able to say, you know what, and was never even a regret. The regret I would have had was leaving good people behind for a few dollars more. I think a good, strong family environment can balance what's pushing people out. Wouldn't you agree with that, Connie?
Absolutely, because now I'm thinking about what's going to happen, right? Like I've been thinking about when as soon as you said that, I was like, that's when people don't call out, right? That's when people don't just say, I don't care, right? Like I don't care who has to be stuck, right? When we actually know each other and we know that there's a graduation coming up, or we know somebody's sweet 16's coming up, or somebody's got a baseball game coming up, we're less inclined to just be sort of careless about the way we engage in the workplace because we care about the people we work with. I mean, I think it's everything to be able to establish a relationship where people are connected and they actually care about what's happening to the person that works next to them. And I get it. There's going to be times where the person that works next to you don't care about you, right? But I don't think that should change who you are as a person. That shouldn't change the way you interact in the environment, because if you've got the bigger picture in mind, you'd understand the impact of not being connected to your colleagues.
Well, can I be honest with you? That's why this dialogue came into play, because I know the adverse of that, and I know that the other side can't be right because I know how it makes people feel. So I think that we should take into consideration where people are coming from, and then work with them to make sure that we're all, what's the end game? Staying united. So what decisions are we making to keep that happening? Because I could see people coming from that family environment and wanting to push for that connection, and then being told like, yeah, not here. And then that person winds up becoming disenfranchised, disgruntled, either gets swept up in the negative culture or winds up leaving.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I think something that you make me think about is, like we just had the 4th of July pass, right? And I had like some friends who, of course, are in corrections, and they were talking about they were gonna, this one was gonna bang out, that one was gonna, it was all the stuff, right? Oh, they don't give a shit, blah 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 blah, right? And then there's this one guy who they was like, oh, you soft, where he's just like, nah, you can't just bang out, such and such is gonna happen, right? Like if you do that, this is what's gonna happen in the facility, and this post is gonna close, or we're not going to be able to run, like this, all of the things. And so the fact that like here he is close enough to his buddies to be like, nah, don't do that, right? But like feeling solid enough to be able to say it, right? Like and not feel guilty, like, oh, you more concerned about the man than about us. And it's like, no, it's just what's going to happen in the facility. Like it's going to be a shit show when we come back on Monday. Like it may have come from a space of self-preservation, but it's also coming from a space of look at what happens when we do stuff like this.
Well, Connie, let's not overlook something you just said and all that too. Besides being able to be truthful with each other, you also said, when you're connected, you start looking at your choices and how does it affect others, as opposed to how do I just benefit from it. So I mean, think about that. If you're working in isolation, do you really know how a
You
choice
don't.
to call out does affect
Yeah.
someone. Or I remember the family environments where I got young kids, I get mandatory for Christmas, and someone comes up and says, "Yo, Ganji, I got you, man. Go home."
Oh, that's nice.
Well, you know, yeah,
That's something that warms your heart though,
yeah,
right? Like someone's thought enough of me to like and my family,
yeah.
right? Because all too often we don't talk about, I mean, I think it's more of a conversation now, but imagine Deanna home with the girls by herself on Christmas,
It sucks.
right? Like it sucks. And then you feel like crap. She feels like crap. The kids miss you. And so here's someone who thought enough about you to say, I don't want that for you.
Yeah, and Connie, you're spot. Like, I mean, obviously now in admin, I don't deal with that as much, but I have dealt with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've made also sacrifices. I'm also at
Yeah.
a fifth facility, so I've moved around a lot. But with that said, that also comes into play when you do have those outside events. You have the families being connected, and it's great what you just said. Imagine someone at work saying, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you go home with Deanna and the kids?" Look how specific that is.
Right.
Like you just said, it means more. But again, that only happens when you're. And one other thing, there is a level of vulnerability in an effort to be united and be connected. I get that. I still go by the motto: distrust is earned.
Mm-hmm.
Trust kind of has to be automatic, because at the end of the day, I can't live my life distrusting everyone. I think that winds up becoming an excuse for people just to ignore people and treat people like shit, and then wonder why people are leaving the profession. Right. So I think in an effort to retain, and again, kind of talking about the transfer anxiety, we kind of went from the individual to what the receiving facility could do. See what we did there? We started at the very beginning about the stuff that we have to deal with, like not sleeping and, some level of don't worry about impressing, worry about learning. And then we crossed into the environment and what the environment can do. And a majority of the dialogue was about the environment, because the environment does have the greater influence. Let's not lie. You got a person that's coming in that's seeking for comfort, trying to hold on to some level of routine. And what you have to do is you have to introduce them to things that help them acclimate to what it is that you're trying to help them, guide them through. But having said that, that really does start with connection. You can't have someone that's new walking into a facility that's isolated, and I just think it doesn't work. I think at the end of the day, when things matter, you expect everybody to be together, but there's no meaning behind it. Yeah, we truly are numbers with no substance. We could totally be more than that when we know each other. And yeah, we mean something happened to Connie. Yo, come on, guys. We all know Connie. Connie's blah, blah, blah. She's got kids. She's got this. And you don't rally. You know what's good about being united too is you don't rally because you're being told to for a superficial reason.
Right.
You're rallying because I know Connie.
Yeah.
I know she has kids. I know that she needs our help. We all know who Connie is. We're not just rallying because the union tells us to or because everybody else is doing it. We're rallying.
I also think there's an element of there has to be that thing in you that receives someone, right? Like, so I'm thinking about, like, so you guys may not know, but Ganji came to my house last year I was celebrating 10 years of home ownership. So I had like a whole thing, right? So Ganji, the girls, Deanna, they all come to the house, and like my family's embracing them, right? Like they never met Ganji from nowhere. I mean, maybe from the book signing, but still, right? Like Ganji's their brother from another mother, right? And the girls are off playing, like it's just like a thing, right? And so sometimes I think it's a matter of also seeing how everyone else is receiving that person that's coming in, right? It can take the edge off if, okay, there might be one asshole in the bunch, right? But the mere fact that like everyone else is trying to help this person get acclimated to the new environment, who can acknowledge that, there was some anxiety with this transfer, they could be like, they may not know what the person is dealing with specifically, but there could be something in there that they're feeling a little uncomfortable with. And there's someone around that person who's willing to help take the edge off, right? Who's willing to like bring them in, like, oh, don't worry about it, like, because sometimes I think that's part of it too. Not only the one person who might be receiving, but how is everybody else treating this person?
That's Connie. That's powerful, Connie. Because I'll tell you something. We were at the family event. We wait for everyone else to start eating. You're like,
oh my god,
no, go up and eat. You're supposed to, of course.
Eat.
Yeah, the girls don't give a shit, but we're trying to, well, should we eat? Because I don't know who that is that's getting the chicken over there, or just go fucking eat, and but also there is, but I want to mention something too. There is some intentionality with introducing yourself, so there is some intentional effort in wanting to get to know people,
right.
But then there's some intentional effort of receiving that. So granted, there was a perfect mix where your whole family's extroverted, so am I. My Deanna not so much, a little bit, but not really so much, but she she adjusts. I almost said she does.
When she's comfortable, she's
yeah, I almost said she does as she's told. No. But because I said when you get there, you don't fucking embarrass me. You
cut it.
I didn't say that. The girls, kids are kids. I mean, they get into it. But either way, I would go in, and then you see the perfect dance. Hey, you're Connie's brother. What's going on? I hear about you all the time. Blah blah blah. What are you making? And then you also build on each other's interests, whatever it is, and the next thing you know, it just works.
Right.
But when there's not intentionality on both ends, because that's a good revisit real quick. When you're not making the intentional effort to get to know people, and they're not making the intentional effort to receive you, I to be honest, that's not management's fault.
Yeah.
That's on you. So again, I thought it was a great dialogue. I thought it was needed. Again, for people that feel that, separation where guys, I hope we said enough to realize that it doesn't. And also maybe it's not really always management. Maybe there's just other things in the environment that makes it impossible for management to introduce something without 100% cooperation. Because that's another thing. You could become so dependent on management that we're not going to do nothing until they make a move. I think they have, but you're expecting their first move to be an immediate great result. It's the beginning of something, and now we're waiting for your move. Chess. It's chess. I moved already, guys. You got to move too. You can't expect us to take the whole board. You got to work with us. But again, I also want to make sure for people at the higher ups, please, or people that look at the higher up in judgment, look at the obstacles that either bring people together or keep people away, and then kind of take into account, is it management or is there something about the obstacles that either pushes people forward? So management, I know you want to get the credit for it, but really just keep maintaining it. But at the end of the day, this is really a good default because it's a small facility. People know each other. But on the adverse, when you do have an environment that's not working, also, is it management? No, guys, this facility is so spread out. Staff's coming from different facilities with different cultures. And I think that we as a team got to help management to start bringing people together. And that's not just higher up down. That's, hey, I'm on the front line, Connie. I realize what's happening here at Southern, I almost said a bad mistake. At one of the facilities that I used to work at, it's all right, it's not the end of the world. I didn't say the specific. At one of the facilities that I used to work at, we were close-knit. Maybe I can introduce some of the things that we did in an effort to bring people together. That's great. You know what? Maybe we'll assign you to the building so you can float around a little bit and borrow on some of that influence that you have, because let's not negate the power of influential people within our circles in an effort to bring people together. So we're, when we go to host an event, whoever we host it for, we start to get people from the different areas. But the key here is unity.
I think also too, I mean, as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, if I had to put one word to it, I guess in my mind, I'm thinking not even one word, but if I had to put like just a final thought, it would just be, you have to be dialed in, right? You've got to be tuned in to what's going on in the facility when someone new is transferring in, when someone is transitioning out, because transitions are just that, right? Like they can be anxiety provoking. And so I think from a leadership perspective, understanding like, all right, somebody new's coming in. Let me make sure I'm there to make sure like the person gets in and they get situated and, all the stuff. And I'm not talking about like an orientation per se. I'm talking about how do we make sure that we are tuned in enough to know the different influencers that are in the facility that could make this transition wonderful or make this transition a disaster, right? And I think as leadership, we have to be mindful of those folks that can make or break the culture and be prepared to intervene where necessary.
Yeah, and that's the key, Connie. I mean, at the end of the day, that should always be our focus. How do we keep people united? And if it's starting to fall apart, what can we do to make it better? And for a facility that has the components to keep people united, and it does start falling apart, what's happening? Because this should not be the default for a facility like this. So understand the culture truly does, all elements, the dynamics of how the people act with each other, the layout of the facility, how management treats them. I think it's a good dialogue. Again, there is some anxiety when it comes to switching from different facilities, but with that said, I think this kind of brings about both perspectives and some level of expectation for you, the person going into the environment, and then for the people that are there waiting to receive you, waiting to welcome you. All right, kind of. So you did get your last thought, kind of. I'm thinking.
I did. I got my last thought. That was it. Just being tuned in to know that it's happening.
Any books or correctional academies you want to?
So I've got The Cage Was Her Cocoon, the journey from prison administrator to entrepreneur, and I have the Civilian Corrections Academy, where we are training non-uniform staff. And lately we've been getting uniform staff, which I was like, whoa, this is awesome. But training staff to engage in the environment. We've got 8 modules. We deal with all aspects of facility operations, inmate manipulation, you name it. We've got it kind of all in there. And the book, The Cage Was Her Cocoon, is out here making waves. It's getting people to actually do some self-reflection and make some changes to their lives. So if it's not done anything, it has changed a couple of lives, and I'm excited about that.
I read it. Great book. And maybe we'll get another book out in the near future.
Yeah, I am working on my leadership book. You and I were starting we had started this journey initially going to do
we
sort of leadership compilation collaboration sort of book.
We could still do it. It's not, I mean, I'm good now. I got the one stuff up. Let's knock it out. Let's maybe the same type of thing where we just balance off each other. You guys want to present, and then we'll put like maybe like the same thing, like passages where we complement each other's thoughts. So maybe 2 thoughts on this, 2 thoughts on that, and then just kind of do like a daily thing. And next thing you know, you got a book.
Yeah.
Guys, the funny thing is, I want to let you know something. Nobody really wants to write a book, but man, when you hold that completed project in your hand.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, the feeling of it.
And when you see other people read it and they're able to grow from it, or they're able to just like gain some insight from it, it's just like, oh, I did this for a reason. Like it matters, I
forgot about that. That's good. You do need people to read your book. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's a good added. Yeah, that's right. Maybe it's more than just holding the book. People fucking read it. You know what I mean? That's true. Hey guys, so again, stay connected, stay united. As always, guys, our show is tipped up. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.